Hi guys, so our bowl has finally dried out. It took a little bit longer than I thought. It actually took about a week. And as you can see, I have pared it down a little bit more with the knife. So I've sort of smoothed off some of these corners. You can just about see here. The inside is as it was before, nicely dried. And what I need to do now, before we do the final oiling, is just to sand this down. So what I've got here, several different types of sandpaper, starting off with a very coarse 70 grit, moving on to a 120, down to a 220, and down to a 320. And what that will do, it'll let us take off the larger lumps and bumps and tool marks first of all, and then we'll gradually go down finer and finer until we've got a nice smooth finish. Now this is going to take quite a bit of time, so I'll fast forward most of this, and we'll see what it turns out like. Right, so we'll start off with this 70 grit, and you don't need a great deal of this to start off with. What you can do, you can take a little block of wood. This is just an offcut from something I was making the other day, and what I tend to do is wrap this round just so you've got a bit of a solid surface. I mean, you can use this by hand, you know, you can just go straight away, but what you tend to find is that it will get quite warm on your fingers with the friction. It's not a problem, but to start off with I normally use a little wooden block. So once you move over to your next grade of sandpaper, it's basically the same thing over again. You cover the entire bowl, just with a slightly finer grade of sandpaper. Okay, so we've brought it down quite a considerable amount now. Hopefully you can see this is now a lot smoother. All of the tool marks are now out. There's a little bit of way to go, but before I do any further, I want to make a start on the inside of the bowl. So we'll go back to our 70 grit and make a start inside. Now what we need to do before we oil this, you need to make sure you get all of your sandpaper completely off. So you want to use a sort of a soft, clean cloth. I'm just using some kitchen paper. basically just get all of the particles off of this, ready for your oil to take. What I'm using for this is tung oil. Now this is food safe, it's used in a lot of kitchen woodenware, and what I'll do, I'll bring the camera a little bit closer, I'll show you how I oil it. Okay, so here's our finished bowl. Hopefully you can get a better view of this now, fully sanded down. And what we're going to use, this is just a container I tend to use for an old piece of t-shirt that I always use with this oil. The reason for keeping this in this container is that there is a risk, albeit a very small one, if you've got an oily rag, they have been known, although it's never happened to me, to spontaneously combust. So I keep this in this container with the lid on. I keep it in the workshop, well away from any other kind of flammable materials, so away from the wood that I've got stored here, or any shavings or anything like that, just in case it does happen to spontaneously set itself alight, and it's nice and contained. Now the best way I've found for doing this is to take your tung oil. Don't have to use tung oil, you can use any kind of food safe oil, so you've got vegetable oil, you've got rapeseed oil, walnut oil, anything that is obviously safe for use with food and food preparation. And to start off with, really all you want to do is pour a small amount, probably a couple of tablespoons worth, in your bowl. And what you'll basically do is just smooth it around the bowl, very roughly at this point. Get around your sides and your edges. And what I also tend to do is keep a couple of pieces of wood just handy that you can lay this on top of when you're done. And just make sure that you coat every area, make sure you get onto the ends. Every part, every side of the bowl. And you can do this warm. You can warm your oil up first. You can warm up your wood first as well if you really want to. There's no need to for this, though some people do think it helps allow the oil to penetrate into the wood. So that's a good first coat on the bowl. Hope you can see that a little bit better now. And obviously you can see there's a nice colour change. It's not too dark of an oil. I tend to find things like vegetable oils, rapeseed oils, things like that are quite dark, and they do change the colour of the bowl quite drastically, whereas obviously this isn't too bad. In terms of the colour change, so it just gives it a nice kind of sheen, slight colour change, but it still looks quite natural. And what you want to do now is leave that for half an hour to an hour, let the oil soak in. There'll still be some tacky residue on there when you're done, and once you've got to that point, basically just take another clean cloth. Again, you can use a clean rag, you can use a piece of kitchen paper, whatever it is you've got to hand, and just wipe off all that residue, leave it 24 hours, and then just give it another light coat. And what you want to do is probably give this 5 or 6 coats over the course of maybe a week, and by the end of which the oil will have penetrated, it would have formed a nice protective barrier over your piece of wood, and you'll be done. Okay guys, it's been about an hour, and I've taken all the residue off. The oil's soaked in reasonably well. As you can see, if I move back a little bit, so we've got a good coating across the entire bowl. Everywhere has soaked in quite well, and this will need another few coats. I'll probably do one tomorrow, and maybe one the day after, and I'll probably do that for 4 or 5 days. just until it's completely stopped absorbing any oil. And what that'll do is it will give it a really good protective coating, and that'll be ready for use. And you can either, you can put food in there. I mean, you could put anything from dry food, wet food, soups, casseroles, that kind of thing. You could use it for something like ornamentation. You could put some sort of like potpourri or something like that in there if you wanted to use it for as almost like an ornament. But I hope that was useful, and by all means leave me a comment, or let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see me do. If you want to see me doing more of this kind of thing, hit the subscribe button, and like I say, I hope that was useful.